So we've got the great pleasure of being joined by the Shadow Chancellor, John McDonnell, the one and only, the next Chancellor of the Exchequer. How you doing, John?
Superbly.
Superb?
I'm really enjoying myself. I think I said this before to you, but I was in the lobby of Parliament a few months back, and Ed Miliband came up and said, "Are you all right?" I must have looked tired or something like that. I said, "I'm having the time of my life." And I realised what sort of pressures he must have been under at the time. But I don't think people realise, actually, Jeremy and I are really enjoying this. No matter what the flack comes at you, the reason the flack's coming at us is because we're doing what we want to do.
So you gave your speech yesterday to conference. I thought it was a brilliant speech. You gave your first speech as Shadow Chancellor in 2016. You weren't saying particularly different things. Obviously, there were particular policies that you were saying that were different, but the broad tone and the politics and the principles haven't changed.
No.
And yet what you were saying in 2016 was regarded as frivolous, utopian, ridiculous. And yet the response from the powers that be to yesterday's speech, whether it be the City of London or people in other parties and the media, has been really muted. So what's changed between yesterday and 2016?
Two things, really. We've had 3 years of preparing the policies and advocating them, so people begin to get used to them. I've been doing this we've been doing meetings all around the country. We do an annual conference on the state of economy. We do regional economic conferences. We're now doing town meetings all around the country every other Saturday. So we've been raising the awareness of our membership and supporters and others at those meetings about what we're about. So people begin to understand what we're about. But in addition to that, I've been meeting, the asset managers, the bankers, the various company leaders and all that sort of thing, and explaining as well what we're about. And all the way through, I've been saying, look, this is what we're into. Some of this you will like, some of this you won't like, but get used to it, it's going to happen. So slowly, we've been explaining our position, and slowly people are beginning to understand it and accept it might be a reality. The second point is they now think we're going to government, so they know we're serious.
So let's talk about some of your historical inspirations for yesterday's policies. We know that's the Meidner Plan in Sweden, but I also heard you quote quite extensively from the bearded Don himself, not Jeremy, but Karl Marx. So on the 200th anniversary of Karl Marx, what is it that we can gain here in 2018 from going back to his writings?
I think one of the key aspects that we need to debate about is the difference between exchange value and use value, and start talking about what really should dominate our thinking, which is use rather than exchange. And in that way, we actually get a real sense of priorities. And it's a small element of Marx's works, but as it goes to the heart of it, what we have is a society that's dominated by exchange value rather than use value. And what that does is it changes the whole nature of the debate about what we actually value in life. So what's interesting at the moment, I get the accusation of being a Marxist thrown at me all the time and all the rest of it, and I welcome it in terms of at least it then gives you the opportunity to then have a proper discussion about it. And I think what's really interesting now is that it might be the anniversary, but I think actually, because the nature of capitalism itself and what we've gone through over the last 8 years, people now are open to an honest debate about Marx's ideas. And I just find it fascinating, absolutely fascinating. And then, like you, there's a new generation coming through. This new generation is extremely well read. And we went through a period where there's a very lack of political education, particularly in the Labour Party as well. I'll just give you this example. When I was a kid, I got appointed to be a researcher in the National Union of Mine Workers. I was appointed by a guy called Mick Mackay, Lawrence Daly, and Joe Gormley. Now, Lawrence Daly and Mick Mackay were two of the most well-read working-class people I've ever met. They were well-drilled in terms of their political theory, but also in literature as well. It was self-taught, autodidact individuals, but they were self-taught via institutions that the working class had created, Workers' Education Association, Trade Union Training, and actually the Labour Party as well, and with Mick Mackay, the Communist Party. A lot of those structures went to the wall for a period, and we had no political education whatsoever really being developed, or it was dominated by neoliberal thinking. All of a sudden, people are now waking up to new ideas. We're setting up the institutions in which various think tanks, etc. And within the Labour Party now, Jenny Formey, the new General Secretary, is focusing on political education. So I think the atmosphere is so creative at the moment.
So from the general to the specific, when you're Chancellor of the Exchequer, you'll obviously have a major say over who would be the next Governor of the Bank of England. Now, I know Mark Carney's there right now and he's not going anywhere. But who would be your ideal candidate if you could pick anybody in the world to be the governor of the Bank of England under a Labour government with John McDonnell in number 11 Downing Street? Who would it be?
I won't be drawn into it. I don't want to avoid the question, but I have a good working relationship with Mark Carney. We meet on a regular basis. We have a dialogue, which is, I think, incredibly constructive. What I was pleased with, that he stayed on, because that means that gives me more of an opportunity for us to come to government and choose our own. So that's helpful for us. I don't want to be naming names at the moment, because as soon as I name anyone for anything, the media pounce upon them. And I don't think that would be fair to actually identify them at the moment. It's like I keep getting asked this question about, who's your favourite businessman, or who, that sort of thing. And there's a whole range of people in the private sector there who do a really good job, etc. But I'll never name them, because they'll get torn apart by the media. When we move forward, what we'll want to have is someone in the Bank of England who, yes, is in tune with our ideas, but has the status and experience of basically of understanding the economy. And there's a range of people out there. We have a set of advisors at the moment that are helping us through, and it'll be chosen from, I think, the right person at the right time to meet the requirements of what will be a radical Labour government.
I was hoping I'd be offered a new job, so I'm terribly disappointed.
I didn't want to name you because the media would pounce upon you immediately, Ash, but now you've exposed yourself. I'm sorry about that.
I'm ready for it. This is a question that I love asking politicians, because you announce policies all the time, but I want to know where your heart really is. So if you could only achieve one thing in government, what would it be?
The objective would be to lift people out of poverty. And I just refer back to my own community. I've lived in my constituency 40 years. I've never known it as hard as this for people. And the key factor that's causing that hardship is that people haven't got a decent roof over their heads. They can't afford a home. Or if they are affording a home, it's because they're working all hours God send just to pay the rent or the mortgage. And we could transform people's lives and it would lift people out of poverty, by having a housing programme, a social housing programme, a council housing programme that would house those people. In addition to that, it would lift those 5,000 people that are sleeping on the streets at the moment into some form of comfort. So that will be one of our priorities when we go into government anyway.
Thank you so much for joining us.